And that's how that always seems to be. And then put them up.
They just fill in here from behind. Come on up. Could I get folks who are standing in the audience to come up here behind the podium, please? Everybody up. Yep, thank you. Come on up. Come on up. Nice and tight. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, we'd love to have you behind us. Show of support.
How about the kids? They have media. You're good.
Are we ready? Okay. All right. I think we're ready. Wow. Thank you all for joining us here at the South Precinct in the East Central neighborhood. And thank you for all of the people behind me who showed up in support of what we're going to be discussing today. This is a location that is built on community policing, and it is growing into a great partnership with this East Central neighborhood. I'm joined by many, as you can see, not just behind me, but all around me today from our community. And this large group is really just a small sample of the community engagement and the partnership from our police chief and from our Spokane Police Department. Given the topic of today's news conference, it's important that we address it here, because this precinct is the result of community engagement with the East Central neighborhood and at all levels. Officers went door to door. They invited feedback from the neighborhood, from people who work here every day, who are raising a family and building community, to understand what matters most to them, and also how they want the department to be a part of their community. They shared concerns about drugs, violence, and property crime, the influence that those behaviors have on our youth, the next generation of leaders. And we have a lot of youth here today. And a desire to do something and to do it together. Neighbors wanted to partner with the department to help businesses, our new library in this new in the neighborhood, the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center, and the parks to grow and to flourish. Most of all, they told the department that they wanted it to invest in the people, the families, and the youth who will benefit from a safe and healthy place to live for years to come. The level of engagement and access was done at the direction of our police chief, Craig Meidl. The origins of this precinct and the support of the neighborhood has shown for officers who work here is what community policing is all about. It is what Chief Meidl and the department are continually building and developing. And it's paying off. Since this precinct was put into place last summer, calls for service are down more than 17%. And officer-initiated calls are up 266%. Both are equally important for successful community policing to work. Public safety, no matter where we go, is the top priority that we hear from neighborhoods in East Central and in neighborhoods across the city. And community policing requires a two-way commitment for the greater the peace, health, and safety of our neighborhoods. Unfortunately, the majority on our city council has been very critical of the community engagement practices of our chief. In just about an hour from now, they will discuss a resolution that stifles voices in our community engagement and the chief's ability to engage with the people he serves. Like those standing behind me and all around me, I am deeply concerned about the council's insistence on keeping alive a topic that has already gone through an independent investigation by the Office of the Police Ombudsman, and that was closed many, many months ago. And I question why the majority on the council are raising these concerns now, several months after that report was presented to the Ombudsman Commission and to them, the City Council. This matter has been investigated and the system has worked. The Ombudsman conducted numerous interviews over several months. He analyzed those interviews. He wrote and published a closing report December 12th that included 5 recommendations for policy improvements. Very briefly, I'll go over those 5 recommendations. That all requests for data and or records that are not publicly or readily available from the public should go through a public records retention system. To define in policy that the bulk of the investigation is complete is when an investigation reaches a logical conclusion and is not referred to the prosecutor's office. Reconsideration of the OPO recommendation that SPD update its policies related to release of body cam videos related to internal investigation records. To consider establishing a city policy and a disclosure agreement for all employees, which outlines what is releasable to the public and provides guidance for employees. And 5th, to maintain case updates between internal affairs and the chief or designee only, and withhold decisions or findings until investigations are complete. Those 5 recommendations from the Ombudsman's office has been directed to the police department, and I have directed the chief to make sure that these 5 recommendations are implemented. We are here today because the City Council, and I'll say the majority on City Council, we have Council members Jonathan Bingle and Michael Cathcart here today, but the majority on City Council is pushing for another independent investigation into the chief's engagement with our downtown commercial property and business owners. A community concerned about crime in our downtown environment. They engaged with our police chief to work on ways to make downtown safer for everyone. Those who work downtown, those who operate businesses downtown, and those who visit our downtown. This is what I expect from our police chief. This is what all of you expect from our police chief. And let's remember, this situation arises from a murder investigation that lost time to apprehend a suspect who had already murdered another individual in our community before the incident occurred that generated the independent ombudsman investigation. Questions arose from that investigation. They were appropriately addressed independently by the ombudsman, whose work was accepted by the Independent Ombudsman Commission. Another costly investigation is redundant, it is unnecessary, and erodes the work of our independent ombudsman. The chief, at the community's desire and through years of engagement, has worked with numerous community groups, faith groups, social, business, civic, educational, youth, adult, senior, and many other organizations to improve relationships with the neighbors that they serve. And he understands that work must continue. We are here today at the East Central neighborhood, at the South Precinct, because that work is continuing. We are here because a police department is deeply engaged in partnership with this neighborhood to build healthier and safer communities. On Friday, just last Friday, we were also here in the East Central neighborhood celebrating this growing relationship, the decrease in calls for service, and increase in officer-initiated engagement. Officers came to that opportunity. It was at Fresh Soul. Michael Brown hosted the event. The officers came to thank the neighborhood for their support, and the neighborhood turned out to say that they appreciate officers in their neighborhood. I will close by saying this. I support the work of the chief and the men and the women in the department who are building relationships every single day with neighborhoods they serve through proactive, continuous engagement. And that engagement will continue. And a huge thank you to everyone who turned out today to show your support of our police department, our men and women who serve this community every single day, putting on that uniform, risking their lives, engaging in their neighborhoods, doing the work that we want them to do. We need to continue to support them. I am so lucky to be a mayor of a community that overwhelmingly supports its men and women in blue. And I am a law and order mayor who works very closely and supports our police chief. So I'm happy to take any questions from media if you have any.
Mayor Woodward, Amanda Rowley with KREM 2. You said that a second investigation would seem redundant, but it is in city code that complaints regarding the chief of police shall be directed to the mayor and investigated by city's human resources. Even though it may be redundant, it's still part of city code. So how do you answer to that, following policy? You say you're a law-abiding mayor, so how do you answer that?
Well, are those complaints from council? Is that a political motive on their part? This investigation already went through the system that we have in place through the Ombudsman's office.
I don't think it's specific to where the complaints come from. It just says complaints. So isn't it the due diligence of your office and human resources to follow city code that you're meant to uphold?
Well, we do that when they come from the community. But when it is political and it comes from the city council, I'm not obligated to do anything.
Spokesman reviewed, the council would say that their concerns were generated by the community, the folks in the community that had called for Meidl's resignation in regards to this. So it was generated by people in the community. What's your response?
Those individuals did call for the police chief's resignation. Their complaint was they didn't like the engagement the police was having with some members of our community, the downtown community particularly. And what this really comes down to is pushback. The majority in our city council doesn't like to listen to dissenting opinion, doesn't like the police chief engaging with communities that have dissenting opinion. That's what this is about. In fact, this is all about stifling voices in the community. I mean, they've done it with the new rules that they have for engagement, of community engagement at their city council meetings. They've reduced the amount of time you can speak. They've reduced how many people can speak at city council. They've reduced how often you can speak during the course of a month at city council. They continue to shut down voices and dissenting opinion, and that's what this is all about.
Can you define the metrics? Can you define the metrics? You say that you would respond to community-generated concerns. What exactly? How do you define that?
Oh, I responded to community generated concerns all the time.
I mean, specifically with an investigation according to city code. You said that would have to be generated by the community. Can you define that then?
I just know that this is a political move on the activists' part, who, number one, don't like our police chief. I don't think like law enforcement. They would like to see fewer police. They don't. This is a whole organized attempt to disparage our police chief and our police department. Yes. And this community won't stand for it.
Did those folks file written reports with the city about their complaint about the police department? And if so, do they go on to the Ombudsman then for investigation?
I don't believe those reports went to the Ombudsman. And that's the system. That's where it should go.
Did they file written reports?
They just sent emails to some of the council members.
I think it would be nice if the community were able to look at what they filed.
I don't believe those reports were filed.
Any other questions from the media?
Yeah, I one, Mayor. A guy talking about KH2. You talk about how the majority of council is going to go through with this resolution. They're discussing it anyway. So let's say it does go through and they do pursue this independent investigation. What's your next steps from your perspective? I know you talked about being against it, but is there anything that you can do to counteract that, or just kind of what's the next steps?
Well, the resolution isn't anything binding. A resolution is a statement from the council. But the fact that they're even entertaining this conversation, having this discussion in public to disparage our police chief is so incredibly disappointing. You know, we have a model department. Our SPD is a model for other departments across the state. This police chief has done such a great job to build a department to where, I mean, we have people from all over trying to get into our, I'm going from this event to a swearing in for a number of lateral officers and new officers that are going to be sworn in to serve our city through our department. And we need to celebrate all of that and support that. Not continue to undermine, disparage, criticize, and tear this institution down. So thank you for coming, and again, thank you to the community for turning out. Thank you for your support.